Bruce Lee walked into the television studio the same way he walked into a fight. Quiet, reading the room before the room could read him. The lobby smelled like hot cables and cheap perfume. Stagehands moved fast, carrying props and microphones like the building itself was running late. Outside, Hong Kong was loud and humid, but inside the studio, the air felt strangely sharp, like everything had edges. Bright lights stabbed the ceiling. A red on-air sign blinked like a warning. And somewhere behind the curtain, a crowd was already warming up, clapping on command, laughing on cue, hungry for a moment they could talk about tomorrow. He wasn't there to prove he was real. He was there because someone had decided to test him in public. The host, famous, polished, always smiling, was the kind of man who could turn anything into entertainment. He had a voice that sounded friendly even when it was cutting, and he knew exactly how to hold a camera's attention. People trusted him because he looked like the safest man in the room. But Bruce could tell the danger wasn't in the host's hands, it was in the host's control of the narrative. A host didn't need to punch you. A host could make the audience punch you for him. A producer greeted Bruce with the bright, nervous enthusiasm of someone who had already sold tonight's drama to the network. "Mr. Lee, thank you for coming. We're live in 6 minutes." The producer's smile was wide, but his eyes flicked away too quickly, like he didn't want to look guilty for too long. Bruce nodded, calm, and looked past him. He watched the camera placements. He watched the exits. He watched the floor marks taped down where people were supposed to stand. He watched the stage manager counting down with her fingers, her mouth silently forming numbers. He listened to the crowd's noise as if it were weather, something you don't argue with, something you learn to move through. A makeup assistant reached for his face. Bruce politely stopped her with a small raise of his hand. "No need," he said. The assistant froze. Most guests said yes to makeup because makeup meant you were part of the show, part of the machine. Saying no wasn't rude, but it was unfamiliar. Bruce didn't smile to soften it. He simply stood there, breathing steady, like a man who had decided his real face was safer than any mask. Behind the curtain, the host rehearsed his opening lines. Bruce heard the tone more than the words. It wasn't admiration, it wasn't respect, it was a setup. The host was building a joke, and Bruce was the punchline. When Bruce stepped onto the stage, the applause erupted like someone had turned on a faucet. The lights hit his eyes so hard that for a second the crowd was a blur. But Bruce didn't squint. He didn't blink like a newcomer. He held his gaze steady, letting his pupils adjust, letting the room reveal itself. The host approached with open arms and a grin that looked generous. He shook Bruce's hand with both of his, as if he was welcoming a hero. The audience loved it, the camera loved it, but Bruce felt something in that handshake, an extra squeeze, a subtle effort to control the moment. The host leaned toward the microphone. "Tonight, we have the famous Bruce Lee," he announced, dragging the name out as if the syllables were seasoning. The crowd cheered. The host continued, smiling. "People say he's the fastest man alive. People say he's not just an actor, he's a real fighter." He paused, a small laugh from the audience, a perfect pause. "But you know television, right?" The host looked at the crowd like they were sharing a secret. "Television makes everything look real." The audience laughed again. Bruce smiled too, but his smile didn't follow the host's rhythm. It arrived late, like Bruce was choosing it, not being pulled into it. The host noticed. His eyes tightened for a fraction of a second, so quick most people would miss it, but Bruce didn't miss it. The host gestured toward a section of the stage where a small mat had been placed. "We thought we'd do something fun," he said, voice playful. "A little demonstration, nothing serious." He turned to Bruce. "Unless you're serious." The crowd laughed, louder this time. The host's words were light, but the message was heavy. If Bruce refused, he'd look scared. If he accepted, he'd step into a trap built for spectacle, not truth. Bruce didn't answer immediately. He looked at the mat. He looked at the cameras. He looked at the host. Then he spoke calmly, almost conversationally. If this is a demonstration, it needs one rule. The host chuckled. A rule? This is live TV. He lifted his hands like the idea itself was adorable. Bruce's voice stayed even. Exactly. Live TV makes people do silly things. A ripple went through the audience. Not laughter. Something else. Curiosity. A little discomfort. The host's grin held, but his eyes didn't like what they heard. The host leaned in, still smiling, but now his tone sharpened slightly. "Okay, Bruce."
"What's your rule?" Bruce said it clearly. "No surprise opponent." The host's eyebrows rose theatrically. "Surprise opponent?" He turned to the audience, milking the moment. "Bruce thinks we're going to trick him." The crowd laughed, but not as cleanly, because the word trick landed too close to the truth. The host waved his hand dismissively. "No tricks, just fun. We brought someone to test your speed, a champion from our local boxing club." He snapped his fingers, and that's when the curtain at the side of the stage moved, and a tall man stepped out in gloves, bouncing lightly on his feet. The audience gasped and cheered. The host smiled wider, triumphant, like he'd just revealed the main event of a circus. The fighter raised his arms, soaking in applause like it was oxygen. Bruce didn't move. He didn't step back. He didn't bow. He simply watched the fighter the way a scientist watches a new specimen. Posture, breathing, weight distribution, ego. The host leaned toward Bruce and spoke in a friendly tone that was actually a knife.
"So, Bruce, real fighter or just movie magic? Let's find out." Bruce finally turned his eyes from the fighter to the host. His voice was still calm, but now it carried something colder, clarity. "If you want truth," he said, "you don't do it like this." The host laughed, but it sounded a little forced. "Then how do we do it?" Bruce looked at the cameras again, then he looked at the audience, and he said the one line that changed the temperature of the entire studio. "You don't test a fighter on television," Bruce said. "You test a man's ego." The crowd quieted, not silent, but quieter, like the room realized it had stepped too close to something real. The host's smile held, but now it looked pinned to his face. And in that moment, Bruce understood the real challenge wasn't the fighter in gloves. The real challenge was the host who wanted Bruce to lose control on camera. Bruce didn't raise his hands into a guard. That was the first thing that confused the audience. They had come for action, for a clean visual story, gloves up, punches thrown, someone embarrassed, someone victorious. Television loved simple outcomes. But Bruce didn't give them the simple picture. He stood relaxed, shoulders loose, chin level, feet light, like he was waiting for a question, not a fight. The host saw the hesitation in the room and rushed to fill it, because in live TV, silence is dangerous if you don't control it. He stepped closer to Bruce, smiling brightly, and spoke to the cameras more than to Bruce. "You see, folks, Bruce is thinking. That's okay. A real fighter thinks." He turned to the tall boxer. "Show him your stance. Let the audience see what a real champion looks like." The boxer bounced, rolled his shoulders, threw a couple of air punches for the crowd. Applause rose again. It was safer now. It was familiar. The host was trying to pull the night back into a predictable script where Bruce would either accept the challenge and risk getting hurt or refuse and get laughed at. Both roads ended in humiliation. Bruce watched the boxer carefully, not with fear, with diagnosis. The boxer was strong, confident, and most importantly, eager to be seen. That eagerness was the weakness. The host was counting on it. The boxer was counting on the audience. Everyone was counting on Bruce to play the role they wrote for him. Bruce turned to the host and spoke quietly, but the microphone picked it up perfectly, and that made it louder than any shout. "This man is not the problem," Bruce said. "Your setup is." The host chuckled, pretending to be amused. "Setup? Bruce, it's entertainment." Bruce nodded slightly, as if that confirmed something in his own mind. Then you're not asking for truth, Bruce said. You're asking for a reaction. A small wave of discomfort traveled through the crowd. People didn't like being reminded they were part of a trap. The host felt it too. His smile stayed, but his eyes sharpened. "Okay," the host said, voice still friendly but faster now, like he needed to regain tempo. "Then give us truth. Show us your famous speed. Just a quick demonstration, nothing violent." Bruce looked at the cameras again. Then he looked at the audience. "If I show speed," he said, "you will clap. If I don't, you will laugh. Either way, you're not learning anything." The host turned that into a joke immediately, because jokes are a shield. "Oh, listen to that. Bruce is also a philosopher." The crowd laughed, but it wasn't as strong. The laughter had cracks in it. Bruce lifted his hand slightly, not like a fighter, more like a teacher stopping a class from talking. "You want a demonstration?" he asked. The host's face lit up, victory, because he thought Bruce was finally stepping onto the mat. "Yes," the host said, "that's what we want." Bruce nodded once. "Then bring me a piece of paper," he said. The audience paused. The boxer paused. The host blinked.
The boss smiled. "Do you think you're calm?" Bruce didn't answer. The boss threw another line. "Calm on your face. I want to put nervousness in your stomach." Bruce slowed his breathing, deliberately, and relaxed his posture. This was Bruce's armor, relaxation. The boss now started the third stage mind game, time torture. "The night is long," said the boss, "and you know what breaks first on a long night? Principles." The boss slowly rotated a pillow on the table, like a timer. "I won't make you an offer," the boss said. "I'll just wait. You'll make the offer yourself." This line was dangerous because it's a truth of human psychology. Uncertainty and waiting exhaust the brain. An exhausted brain chooses shortcuts. Shortcuts are compromises. The boss gestured to the chair again, this time almost kindly. "Sit down," the boss said. Bruce still chose to remain adamant, but now it wasn't stubbornness. Bruce's insistence was a strategy. When you sit down, you become a guest. A guest is often polite. Politeness softens boundaries. Bruce didn't want to soften boundaries. The boss said in a calm voice, "You feel like I'm forcing you. I'm not forcing you. I'm offering you comfort." Bruce softly replied, "Comfort is sometimes a trap." The boss smiled. "Good, you're smart. That's why I want to keep you here." Then the boss used his most refined weapon, stories. "I hear a lot of stories about you," the boss said. "They say you're fast. They say you're fearless. I like fearless people, because fearless people let their guard down." Bruce caught the boss's line. The boss was using fearlessness as a weakness. Bruce said calmly, "Fearless doesn't mean careless." The boss immediately replied, "And you're careless?" Bruce said, "I'm aware." The boss laughed a little. "Even an aware person gets tired." The boss set a trap of tiredness. A messenger brought tea on a tray and placed it on the table. "Drink it," the boss said. Bruce looked at the cup but didn't reach out. The boss raised an eyebrow. "Poison?" Bruce said calmly, "Poison isn't necessary when you're controlling the context." The boss grinned. He liked the line, because Bruce was finally acknowledging that the boss was trying to control. The boss said softly, "I'm not controlling, I'm arranging." Bruce replied, "Arrange also means control." The boss picked up the cup, took a sip, then put it back, a signal of safety. "Ub?" the boss asked. Bruce didn't touch the cup. "I won't do anything tonight that will make me ashamed of myself tomorrow," Bruce said. The boss narrowed his eyes. "Ashamed? You ashamed of yourself?" Bruce said calmly, "Yes, and that's why I'm free." The boss tightened his jaw for the first time, because bosses don't understand people who are driven more by internal shame than external fear. The boss uses external fear. Bruce uses internal standards. Boss made the game more risky, misdirection by kindness. "It wasn't my plan to keep you here," the boss said. "I'm protecting you." Bruce finally looked the boss straight in the eye. "Protect from whom?" Bruce asked. The boss shrugged. "From the city.
Your fans love you, but the city envies you. Bruce said calmly, protection becomes a cage when you decide to. The boss chuckled. Cage? Do you even have an idea for a cage? The boss suddenly pointed to the corner of the room. There was another door, half open. Go there, the boss said. Just look around and come back. Bruce thought for a second. It could be the door sitting there. Going to the door is driven by curiosity. Curiosity can become a trap, but avoiding it can also give the boss a victory. You got scared. Bruce chose the third option. He didn't rush. He walked slow. Bruce went to the door. Inside the door was a small room, empty, with just a wooden stool and a circle drawn on the floor. Seeing the circle, Bruce understood. The boss's mind was creating a game ring, a symbolic ring. The boss wanted Bruce inside the circle so that the boss could push him into a fight and perform state of mind. Bruce stayed at the edge of the circle. He didn't go inside. The boss's voice came from behind. Come inside. Without looking back, Bruce said, the circle is yours. I don't come inside your circle. The boss's smile froze again, for the third time, because the boss had repeatedly failed to pull Bruce into the system. The boss now chose a last resort tactic, threat by reputation. I might start a rumor around town tomorrow morning, the boss said, about you, about your father, about your training, your image. Bruce, on the edge of the circle, replied bluntly, it's not my image, it's the people's. The boss said, the people's image makes your career. Bruce replied, my career makes my discipline. The boss hid his frustration, but even in hiding it, it leaked out. You're too confident, the boss said. Bruce said calmly, I'm not confident, I'm prepared. Prepared, the boss caught the line.
What? Bruce's voice stayed calm, but it cut. If I say yes, I look arrogant. If I say no, I look weak. That's your game, not mine. The host's laugh came out sharp, almost angry. So what do you say? He demanded. Bruce leaned slightly toward the microphone. I say, Bruce said, you don't deserve this answer on live television. For a second, the studio felt like it stopped breathing. The host tried to smile again, but it looked wrong now, like a mask slipping. And then the host made the mistake Bruce had been waiting for. He reached out and grabbed Bruce's wrist, just lightly, just playfully, to force him toward the mat. It was a small touch, but it was the first physical move of the night. And now, in front of everyone, the host had broken the very rule Bruce had asked for: no surprise pressure. Bruce's eyes didn't widen, his face didn't change, but his body shifted, so small the camera almost missed it, and the host's hand suddenly wasn't controlling anything anymore. It wasn't a punch, it was something worse for television. It was exposure. The host's fingers were on Bruce's wrist for less than a second, but that second was the moment everything changed. On television, the smallest touch can become a story, and in the studio, everyone instinctively understood what had just happened. The host had stopped being a presenter and started being a participant. He had crossed from fun into force, and now the show wasn't his anymore. Bruce didn't yank his arm away. He didn't do the dramatic thing the audience expected. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply rotated his wrist the way you turn a key in a lock, smooth, almost lazy, and in that rotation, the host's grip lost structure. It wasn't pain that made the host release. It was geometry. The host's fingers were suddenly holding nothing useful, like gripping air with confidence. The host laughed too loudly, too quickly, trying to turn it into comedy. Okay, he said, still smiling for the cameras. Look at that, he's slippery. He was attempting to rescue his authority by making it a joke, but the audience's laughter didn't return, because they had felt the shift. A presenter who grabs a guest on live television is no longer safe. He's desperate. Bruce looked at the host's hand the way you look at a hand reaching for a stove flame, without anger, but with a warning. Then Bruce spoke into the microphone calmly, so calmly it made the moment heavier. You touched first, he said. That sentence landed like a gavel.
It wasn't a threat, it wasn't a challenge, it was a record. You touched first, meaning you're responsible for whatever happens next. The boxer, still standing on the mat, leaned forward slightly. He had been brought there to be the real fighter, the controlled spectacle, but now his role was uncertain. He wasn't sure if he should step in, because stepping in would make him the villain in a situation he didn't create. He glanced at the host as if asking for instruction. The host didn't look at him. The host was staring at Bruce, trying to keep his smile alive while something inside him started tightening. Off stage, the producer's face was pale. Stage managers were making frantic gestures, cut to commercial, switch camera angles, do anything, but the on-air sign still burned red, and the host was too proud to surrender the frame. "All right," the host said, voice rising. "We're having fun. Bruce is taking it too seriously, folks. Let's reset." He stepped backward to regain distance and control. He pointed at the boxer, as if to bring the night back to its original script. "Champion, show a jab. Bruce will show his speed. Light, friendly." Bruce didn't move toward the mat. Instead, he moved one step toward the host, close enough that the host's body language couldn't hide behind performance. The host's eyes flicked down to Bruce's feet for a split second. That's what fear looks like in an untrained person. You start checking for danger because you can't predict it. Bruce spoke quietly, so quietly the host had to lean in to hear, and that made the host look small on camera. "You don't want a test," Bruce said. "You want a winner." The host forced a laugh. "Of course I want a winner," he said. "That's television." "And that's the problem," Bruce replied. The host's grin strained. Okay, he said, turning to the crowd. "Bruce is giving us philosophy again." He tried to pull the audience back to laughter, because laughter makes a host powerful. But Bruce didn't let the audience drift. He turned to them directly and spoke with a clarity that was almost uncomfortable. "Listen," Bruce said, "if you want to see fighting, go to a ring. Here, you are watching ego." A hush slid across the room. It wasn't total silence, but it was the kind of quiet that happens when people realize they've been enjoying something cruel without admitting it. The host felt the hush and panicked. Panic in a host doesn't show as trembling, it shows as speeding up.
"Okay," the host cut in fast. "Bruce, answer one simple thing. One thing, right now, live. Is your kung fu real?" The question sounded innocent, but it was designed like a trap door. If Bruce answered yes, the host would mock him as arrogant. If Bruce answered no, the host would declare him a fraud. Either answer gave the host control. Bruce gave neither. He smiled, small, contained, and said, "If you need me to say it, you already don't believe it." The audience made a soft sound, half laugh, half shock. The host's eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to losing. The host's whole career was built on being the smartest person in the room, the one with the last line, and now Bruce was taking that away without raising his voice. The host took a step forward again, and this time his smile vanished for a moment, just a flash of something raw. "Fine," he said, voice tight. "Let's make it simple. If you're real, you'll stand on the mat for 10 seconds. That's it, 10 seconds. No fighting, just stand there while he touches you." The crowd reacted. That sounded reasonable. It sounded harmless. But Bruce heard the real purpose: humiliation. 10 seconds of being pushed, grabbed, handled on camera so the host could narrate Bruce's discomfort. The host wanted Bruce to become an object, not a man. Bruce nodded slowly. 10 seconds, he repeated, as if he was tasting the idea. The host's face brightened. "Yes, 10 seconds. That's fair." Bruce took one step toward the mat, just one, and the crowd leaned forward. The boxer lifted his gloves slightly, ready to follow the host's command. The host smiled wider, relieved. He thought he had pulled Bruce into the frame. But Bruce stopped at the edge of the mat and looked at the host. "One condition," Bruce said. The host laughed in disbelief. "More rules?" Bruce's voice stayed even. "If he touches me," Bruce said, You touch him." The crowd made a sound. Surprise, amusement, curiosity. The host blinked. "Me?" he asked, like it was ridiculous. "Yes," Bruce said. "You're the one asking for this." The host tried to joke. "Oh, I'm not dressed for that." Bruce didn't laugh. "Then don't ask him to do it," Bruce said. The host's smile froze again. He was trapped between two fears. Refusing would make him look like a coward, but accepting would put him inside the test he created. And Bruce had designed it perfectly because it wasn't violent. It was ethical. It forced accountability. The host glanced off stage, searching for help. The producer was signaling no, but the cameras were live and the audience was watching. The host turned back, laughed thin and sharp. "All right," he said, "fine, I'll touch him for entertainment." He emphasized the last words like armor. Bruce nodded once. "Good," he said. "Now you'll understand." The host stepped onto the mat first, as if to prove bravery. The boxer hesitated, confused. The host waved him in. "Come on, champion," he said. "Light touch, nothing more." The boxer stepped in, and the crowd clapped nervously. Bruce stepped onto the mat last. He didn't raise his fists. He simply stood with his hands relaxed at his sides, eyes calm, posture soft, like a man standing in a line at a bank. That calmness made the boxer uneasy. Fighters hate when you don't look like you're fighting because they can't read your intent. The host lifted his hand and reached toward the boxer's glove. Just a tap. The boxer barely felt it. The host laughed to the audience. "See? Easy." Then the boxer reached toward Bruce's chest, aiming for a harmless touch, exactly as instructed. Bruce moved. It wasn't fast like a punch. It was fast like a decision. He shifted half a step, not backward, not forward, sideways, offline, and in that shift, the boxer's hand touched nothing but air. At the same time, Bruce's palm made gentle contact with the boxer's wrist, not a strike, not a slap, just contact, like a teacher guiding a student's hand away from danger. The boxer's balance changed. His shoulders tilted. His foot had to correct. It wasn't dramatic enough to be a stunt, but it was undeniable enough to be scary. Because every fighter in the room, every person who had ever been shoved, grabbed, controlled, recognized that moment. Bruce had moved the boxer without hurting him. The host's laughter died in his throat. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't know what to do. The studio became a strange, sharp quiet like a room realizing it had gone too far. Bruce looked at the host and said softly, "That's 10 seconds." The host blinked, confused. "But he didn't touch you." Bruce nodded. "Exactly." And then Bruce added the line that made the producer panic behind the cameras. "You wanted me to look small," Bruce said, "but you didn't understand. Control is smaller than touch." The host's face went pale for a split second. The audience felt it. The boxer stepped back, suddenly careful, suddenly respectful.
The host opened his mouth to speak, to rescue the moment, to turn it into a joke, but no sound came out clean. Because for the first time on his own show, the host didn't have a line. And that's when the off-air decision began to form, just off stage, just behind the cameras, because the network could feel it too. The show had become something they couldn't control. The host's mouth opened and closed once, like his brain was searching for the right tone to put a joke on top of what had just happened. He wasn't scared of Bruce punching him. He was scared of the audience seeing the thing the host never allowed them to see, a moment where his control didn't work. He forced a laugh. It sounded thin, like metal. Okay, he said, clapping twice, too fast, too loud. "That was impressive. The man is quick." He looked toward the cameras, trying to climb back into the role of narrator, because narrators control meaning. "Folks, you see, it's all about reflexes, like a magic trick." Bruce didn't correct him immediately. He let the host talk, because letting someone talk when they're trying to save face is its own kind of pressure. The host kept going, filling the air with words. "You know, it's show business. Bruce is a star. Stars know how to move for the camera." He glanced at the boxer and winked, as if to recruit him into the lie. "Right, champ?"
The boxer didn't smile. He didn't wink back. He was still feeling his own balance correction in his bones. Fighters can pretend with their mouths, but their bodies remember the truth. The boxer took a half step back, lowering his gloves slightly, not in surrender, but in caution. That caution was visible. The audience saw it. And once an audience sees fear in a strong man, they stop laughing. The host sensed the shift and panicked again. Panic is what makes people double down. He turned to Bruce with that grin still forced onto his face. "All right, Bruce," he said, "one more thing for the crowd. Just one more. They want to see you do something real, something undeniable." He spread his hands, performing innocence. "A little spar. No harm. Just a touch. Just show us you're not afraid." Bruce looked at him with quiet patience, like a teacher listening to a student who keeps repeating the wrong lesson. "You keep saying touch," Bruce said, "but you mean humiliate." A ripple went through the audience, half laughter, half shock. The host's smile stiffened. "Humiliate?" he repeated, voice rising. "Bruce, you're taking this personally." "It is personal," Bruce said, still calm. "You used my name to sell a moment." The host threw his hands up, laughing loudly to drown it out. "Oh, he thinks I'm selling." He turned to the audience, searching for allies. "Folks, am I selling? It's television. It's a show." The crowd gave scattered laughs, but they weren't united anymore. The laughter didn't save him. It exposed him. A producer stepped into frame at the edge of the stage, trying to signal the host to move on. The host ignored him. That was another sign of losing control, when you stop listening to the people who normally control you. The host was now in a fight of his own, a fight to win back status. "Fine," the host snapped suddenly, the friendliness cracking. "Let's do it the way you want. You said private tests are real? We don't have private. We have live. That's what you agreed to." He leaned forward, eyes narrow. "So show us, on live television, right now, can you stop a real punch?" The audience made a sound. A real punch. That was escalation. The boxer lifted his gloves again, uncertain, looking between the host and Bruce. The boxer didn't want to hurt Bruce, but he also didn't want to embarrass himself either. That conflict is exactly what creates accidents. Bruce stepped closer to the math center. Not dramatic, not heroic. He positioned himself like a man stepping into a conversation. "One punch," Bruce said to the boxer. "Slow." The host laughed. "Slow? The crowd wants speed." Bruce didn't glance at the crowd. "Slow," he repeated, and this time his voice carried something firm. Not anger, authority.
The boxer looked at Bruce and nodded once. A respectful nod. That nod alone told the audience what the host couldn't control anymore. The fighter was now taking Bruce seriously, not the host. The boxer raised his glove and began a jab, measured, controlled. Bruce didn't dodge like a dancer. He didn't swat like a brawler. He did something that looked almost too small to matter. He moved his head slightly offline, and his hand made a gentle contact on the boxer's forearm, not pushing, not striking, just redirecting the line. The jab extended into empty space. The boxer's shoulder followed. His body leaned forward a fraction. Bruce did nothing else. No counterpunch, no show-off, no humiliation, just emptiness where the punch was supposed to land. That emptiness was the real demonstration, because it wasn't about being faster, it was about being earlier, earlier in decision, earlier in angle, earlier in calm. The boxer pulled his hand back slowly, eyes wide, like he had just seen a door he didn't know existed. He looked at Bruce and quietly said something that the microphone barely caught. "How?" The host's face changed. He wasn't just uncomfortable now, he was threatened, because the moment had become genuine, and genuine moments on television are dangerous when they aren't yours. The host clapped again, too hard. "Amazing! Amazing!" he shouted, trying to reclaim it. "See? Reflex! Reflex!" He turned to the cameras and started narrating aggressively, filling space with words. "Bruce Lee is fast, folks. Fastest hands in Hong Kong, maybe the world." He was stacking praise now, hoping praise would soften the truth. But Bruce didn't let it drift into flattery. He looked at the host and said plainly, "Stop." One word. Not loud, not a performance.
Stop. The host froze. The crowd froze. The producer froze. Stop, Bruce repeated, and now there was no smile in his voice. You're turning people into props. The host tried to laugh. Props? Bruce cut him off gently but completely. You asked for a punch, Bruce said. You got your answer. Now stop pushing. The host's eyes flicked to the cameras again. He could feel his authority slipping through his fingers like water. And then, because he was desperate, he made the fatal television mistake. He turned to the boxer and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hit him faster, real speed." The boxer's head snapped toward the host. "What?" he said, clearly uncomfortable. The audience gasped. That was no longer entertainment. That was reckless. The producer stepped forward from offstage, face hard. A stage manager rushed to the control booth. The host, still smiling, added quickly, "Just for the show, he can handle it, Bruce can handle it." Bruce's gaze locked on the host, calm but cold now. "You're not testing me," Bruce said. "You're testing how far you can go on live TV." The host opened his mouth to respond, probably with another joke, another deflection, but his words got swallowed by a sound in his earpiece. The producer was shouting to the control room. The host could see it in their faces now. They weren't just worried about Bruce. They were worried about liability, about the network, about a live broadcast turning into a scandal. The host tried to regain control with his voice, but his voice suddenly didn't matter, because off-stage, a hand reached for the switch that controlled the feed. The on-air sign still glowed red, but for the first time that night, the studio's real power wasn't on the stage, it was in the control room, and the decision to go off-air was seconds away. The host could feel it before anyone said it out loud. He could feel the studio slipping out of his hands, the way a microphone slips when your palms start to sweat. The cameras were still pointed at him, the lights were still burning, the crowd was still sitting there, but something invisible had changed. The control room had stopped trusting him. He laughed one more time, because laughter was the only tool he had left. Folks, he said, hands up as if he could calm the situation with a gesture. Everyone relax. It's television. It's entertainment. Bruce is fine. The champion is fine. We're all fine." But the boxer wasn't fine. The boxer wasn't angry or terrified. He was alert, which is worse for a show. A show wants people relaxed and predictable. The boxer had become cautious and real, and reality is poison to staged momentum. He lowered his gloves slightly and looked toward the producer at the side of the stage, like he wanted permission to stop. Bruce stood centered on the mat, calm, not triumphant. That calm wasn't soft anymore. It was disciplined, the kind of calm that doesn't need applause. The host took one step toward Bruce, smiling with too many teeth. "Bruce," he said, voice lower, trying a new tactic, intimacy. "Come on. Give us a little moment, something the audience can take home, a quick exchange, a little magic. This is good for you, too."
Bruce stared at him for a beat. Then he spoke, not loudly, but clearly enough to cut through the studio. "You're not asking for a moment," Bruce said. "You're asking for control." The host's face tightened. "Control? I'm the host." Bruce nodded once. "That's why it's dangerous," he said. The crowd made a low sound, half uncomfortable, half fascinated. The host tried to pivot fast, because pivoting is what hosts do. "All right," he said brightly, "let's take questions from the audience." But before he could point, the producer stepped fully onto the stage, not in a friendly way, in a way that said, "This is no longer your show." The producer's microphone wasn't on, but his body language was loud. He leaned toward the host and whispered aggressively. The host's smile stayed on, but his eyes flicked with panic, like a man trapped between image and survival. Then the host tried to laugh it off, waving at the producer. "We're live," he mouthed, as if that would save him. It didn't, because the producer wasn't worried about being live anymore. He was worried about what live now meant. Bruce watched the producer and understood something important. The producer wasn't stepping in for Bruce's safety. He was stepping in for the network's safety. That was the real line. A network could tolerate embarrassment. It could tolerate tension, but it could not tolerate a situation where a host instructed a fighter to throw real speed at a guest on broadcast. That was lawsuit territory. That was scandal territory. That was the kind of thing that ends careers. The producers spoke into his headset, eyes locked on the control room's glass window. The host's face froze for a split second because he knew exactly what that meant. Then it happened. The studio screens on the side flickered. The crowd's applause sign went dark. The sound of the audience, still there, still breathing, suddenly felt distant, as if someone had turned down the world. The red on-air sign blinked once, twice, and then switched off. For half a second, nobody moved. Not because they didn't understand, because they did. The show had been cut. They had gone off air. The host's smile collapsed like a dropped mask. "What are you doing?" he snapped, forgetting the cameras weren't broadcasting. His voice was sharp now, raw, private. "We're in the middle of—" The producer cut him off. "You're done," he said flatly. "You almost turned this into a disaster." The host tried to regain dominance in the only way he knew: blame. He pointed at Bruce. "He made it weird. He's the one—" Bruce didn't argue. He didn't defend. He didn't even look offended. He waited, letting the host exhaust himself. Silence is brutal when someone is trying to build a story with emotion. Silence doesn't fight you. It lets you fight yourself. The boxer stepped back further, gloves down now, looking uncomfortable. He hadn't wanted to be part of this collapse. He had come for a segment. He had walked into a reputation-destroying moment. The crowd began to murmur. Without the broadcast, they were no longer an audience. They were witnesses, and witnesses are what powerful people fear. The host realized that too late. He tried to put the smile back on, turning to the crowd. "Folks, small technical issue," he said, voice suddenly sweet again. "Just a break. We'll be back." But the producer didn't play along. "No," he said loudly enough for people to hear. "We're not coming back." That sentence was a guillotine. The host stared. "You can't," he started. The producer leaned in. "I can," he said, "because you crossed a line." The host's jaw clenched. His eyes scanned the room as if searching for someone to rescue him. Another producer, a network executive, anyone. But no one stepped in. No one wanted to share the blame. And then the host did the most revealing thing of all. He turned to Bruce, not with humor, not with charm, but with a quiet, angry urgency. "What do you want?" he hissed. Bruce looked at him, calm as ever, and answered in a voice that didn't need microphones. "I wanted you to stop before you touched someone's dignity." The host's face twitched. "Dignity?" he scoffed. Bruce nodded. "Yes," he said. "You were going to make me a joke. Then you were going to make him," Bruce glanced at the boxer, "a weapon. That's not entertainment. That's cowardice." The boxer flinched slightly because the word weapon hit too close to the truth. The host opened his mouth to respond, but he couldn't find the right mask fast enough. Off-air, his charm wasn't as strong. Without cameras, he was just a man who had pushed too far. The producer stepped between them. "Bruce, I'm sorry," he said, the first genuinely human line of the night. "This got out of hand." Bruce didn't accept the apology like a celebrity would. He accepted it like a disciplined person, briefly. "It's fine," he said, "as long as it doesn't happen again." Then Bruce did the last thing the host never wanted him to do. Bruce walked away, without leaving the host a final line.
Made the moment legendary. Because it meant the host didn't get a conclusion, he didn't get a punchline, he didn't get the satisfaction of closing the story. Bruce had taken that away. Backstage, a crew member handed Bruce's jacket. Bruce put it on slowly, not rushing. The producer followed him a few steps, still shaken. "Are you okay?" he asked. Bruce nodded. "I'm okay," he said, "but you should think about what you almost broadcast." The producer swallowed. "It was supposed to be a stunt," he muttered. Bruce looked at him. "That's what people say," he replied, "right before someone gets hurt." Outside the studio, the night air hit Bruce's face like water. He exhaled slowly. The city lights were still there, the streets still alive,
But Bruce's expression was not satisfied. It was thoughtful. Because the real victory wasn't that he made a host look small. The real victory was that he didn't become what the host wanted him to become. He didn't react. He didn't chase. He didn't win in the loud way. He won in the only way that matters in public humiliation games. He refused to participate. And that is why the story went off air. Not because Bruce did something violent, because Bruce exposed something the network couldn't risk showing. What happens when a man with discipline refuses to be a prop in someone else's ego?